Part of some crazy stories, Jane Duker. None as sad as, I guess, a week ago yesterday when we all found out that Tom Schweik committed suicide. Normally, media doesn't report on suicides, but when it's a sitting auditor who's running for governor, you can't help but talk about it. And it's seedy and it's terrible and it's awful. And then on top of that, you have the story coming out, first reported by Tony Messenger, in which Tom Schweik was upset with an ad that Catherine Hanaway's supporters put out, calling him a wimp and just sort of making fun of his physical appearance. And then, of course, he was going to call a news conference calling out John Hancock, the head of the Republican Party, for using or saying things that could be construed as anti-Semitic. That's one thing. And then Senator Danforth, from the pulpit, from the funeral, in his homily, goes further than anybody else, talking about how these people are bullies within his own party, and that words matter and words kill. And we've seen that here in Missouri. We talked yesterday off the air about some of this stuff, and I think we both agree that it was so powerful and so big that nobody has responded yet to what he said.
I mean, well, first of all, yeah, this is the most tragic thing. My heart goes out to this family, the friends. Everybody's hurting. Okay, this isn't, when you set aside all the political ramifications, I mean, this is a human tragedy, and it's heartbreaking. I mean, he was a honest, wonderful man, dedicated public servant. I mean, they did an ad about his appearance because they're not going to find something that says that this man ever did anything dishonest or untoward as a public servant. He did it for all the right reasons. He believed what he was peddling. You may not have agreed, but he believed it, and he was a true believer. And you need those, and those people are rare. They're rare in politics. And so that side of it, like, there are not even words to explain how sad and horrible all of that is. And then now you have this sort of secondary issue of sort of, does politics kill people, and this sort of thing going on, and, the narrative going on. And I think people were surprised by how far Senator Danforth went. I mean, he's a revered senator. Doesn't matter what party. Right. He's, and has always been, seen as someone who can be reasonable and someone who can bring people together. I was surprised by the nature of his comments. And, I think I wasn't there, but reading them was very difficult. But if you talk to anybody that was in the room, I mean, the air left the building. Because, it was just so powerful.
Let me say one more thing. He calls out the bullies. Not by name. He calls out
but the facts were
John
specific
Hancock,
enough
not by
so
name.
But
he also calls out himself by saying, I taught Tom Schweik to take the high ground and never give it up. And he took the high ground, and he was doing what I taught him to do, and he asked me to help him secure the high ground, and when he needed me most, I wasn't there for him because I told him, let somebody else do it. So Senator Danforth, while calling out his own party, also called out himself.
Well, yeah, I thought it was very interesting because, I mean, clearly they were incredible friends. Not much time has passed, and here he is sort of having to do a homily about one of his dearest friends. Right. I mean, the anger and rage and emotion he must be feeling as a human being, much less a senator or much less a member of the clergy. So he starts off by saying that basically I told Tom Schweik, you don't have the sort of the temperament to do politics. Frankly, your skin is too thin. Right. And so, which I find very interesting, very honest. After seeing the statement of his assistant that came out yesterday, and we can talk about that, the context of what he said made a lot more sense to me because he indicated that basically he decided he was going to set this press conference and he was going to clear the air and he was going to do this. And that's where you hear from the Tony Messenger, voicemail. That's sort of where the information people had gotten had stopped. Right. And then now you have a statement which basically says that there was, some discussions, phone call in between the Messenger voicemail and when he eventually took his own life. And when you hear what was done, you get a far different impression where he had decided that this was something he was going to do. people around him, including Senator Danforth
Right.
and probably others, were telling him this is not a good idea. This is not something you need to do. And when he sort of found out that his wife and his mentor were sort of discussing this and telling him not to do it, you sort of see this, oh my goodness, you know, the most important people in my life,
Right.
you know, don't believe in what I'm doing. And
Right. And I think
he referred to that,
he refers
which
to that,
had
right.
to be horribly painful.
Right. So all these people who are this whispering campaign against Danforth, who's saying, I can't believe he said it. That's not the right place. That's not the right. He calls himself out and says,
but it also shows sort of this break in causation, and it's like, well, it wasn't. I mean, he was going to address what he viewed was an unfair whisper campaign.
Yes.
What he could not address is when other people abandoned him in his quest.
Right.
Which is not. I mean, to me, that's not rational behavior.
Well, no. There's no question
and
nobody. I'm not going to put words in the man's mouth. But the argument that he's too thin-skinned, and that when Senator Danforth says politics. There should be a place for thin-skinned, good people in politics.
That is the right statement.
Right.
Everyone agrees with that.
Right.
Everyone agrees that this is nasty, gross, awful.
So when he says to somebody, hey, you shouldn't get into politics, you're too thin-skinned.
That's a bad commentary on public service.
That is
absolutely.
Right.
And I applaud him for saying that, and I don't think there's anyone that disagrees with that. However, what I have been concerned with from the very beginning is that people are taking something that may correlate, okay? His suicide followed a lot of political nastiness.
Right.
Is that the causation? I think that it's a very dangerous road. I think it does a disservice to mental health issues and others when you say that in this circumstance, because you could spread the blame pretty far and wide if you were really going to say others were responsible for this.
You cannot say Danforth's actions caused this.
Of course, I don't believe that.
Right. You can't say Hanaway's people caused this. You
a lawyer up because you're somehow culpable.
Right. You can't say John Hancock caused this. Right. However, it is part of a conversation that is larger. I've always looked at them separately, but a whisper campaign, some really absurdly embarrassing ads that are being run that are only meant to sort of hit at Tom Schweik.
And that was the purpose of that ad. Make no mistake. I mean, from an intentional standpoint, that was not for the voter.
It was an audience of one,
and they wanted to see if he would react.
Right. And all right, when we come back, let's talk about this whisper campaign that has gotten so much attention. 9:50 here.